Imagine being stuck on an island where most of the population got infected with monkey rabies, and now they want to eat you down to the bone. This is the story of 28 Years Later, a movie released in 2025. In today's video, I'm gonna break down this wild plot and give some top tips to help little Spike take his mom to see Dr. Voldemort without getting eaten by the infected on the way. Plus, I'll count how many unlucky folks bite the dust and call out the stupidity of these characters who clearly weren't blessed with smarts. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button so you can catch the video when the next movie comes out in 2026. Don't forget the most important thing, rub a banana on that like button. The movie kicks off sometime after the UK got overtaken by monkey rabies, which sadly wiped out most of the population. A few lucky idiots managed to escape the big cities and found shelter in rural Scotland. Among them is Jimmy. Pay attention to this guy because he's gonna play a big role in the fourth movie. One morning, Jimmy gets invited to a tea party by his cousins, which also involves the soul-crushing task of watching Teletubbies. I don't know about you, but I'd rather get bitten by the infected than sit through that show, cause that's real pain. Just as things are getting excruciating, the adults' fun is interrupted by a full-on monkey rage attack as it becomes clear that a horde of infected has breached the perimeter. Jimmy's mom tells him to stay quiet and not leave the room, which is probably the worst advice ever. At this point, the village should have had an escape plan in place in case of an outbreak. They could have dug a tunnel under the house or even had a cellar with a trap door. That way, the kids could survive and help keep the species going. And seriously, look at this garbage of a village. Where are the walls, fences, trenches, or anything that could protect them? That overgrowth around the place is a huge disadvantage. It's gonna keep the humans from seeing the infected coming. Since everyone here is a moron, Jimmy thinks it's a good idea to walk up to the door and call for his dad.
Dad?
I don't think that's Daddy. 3 infected burst through the door and feast on Jimmy's 7 cousins, marking the beginning of our count of teenage corpses. Since Jimmy's behind the door and hasn't been spotted, he makes a run for it, but not before seeing his mom get bitten and turned. Quick side note, only people who get fully finished off or infected will count in our body count. Anyone who transforms and doesn't die doesn't make the cut. Anyway, Jimmy runs to the village church and asks the priest for help, who doesn't seem too worried about the invasion as he's casually praying like it's just another Tuesday. Jimmy calls him Dad, which implies this dude wasn't always a priest, or maybe he was. Things are kind of foggy here. Jimmy's dad tells him to chill since it's Judgment Day. He hands him a crucifix and tells him to hide under the church. Doesn't take long before the infected break into the church and turn Jimmy's dad, who seems to really enjoy getting bitten by strangers. The priest and the rest of the rabid gang leave the building, and Jimmy takes the chance to bolt through the woods. The movie then jumps 28 years into the future, with a message on screen saying the infection was contained in mainland Europe, but the UK is still sealed off from the rest of the world, leaving the few survivors to fend for themselves against the infected. We're then introduced to a village on a small island near England. We then meet a smart kid called Spike, a 12-year-old boy who's about to go through a rite of passage to become a real man. The catch? It's not about hitting the bar and getting wasted. It's about accompanying his dad, Jamie, to infected territory and doing the impossible, killing a man monkey. Besides the two of them, we also meet Isla, Spike's mom, who's suffering from a serious illness that causes a lot of pain and sometimes messes with her memory, leaving Isla unsure of where she is. Jamie's basically at his breaking point, taking care of his wife since every day is the same struggle. When he tells Isla that Spike is going through the ritual, she flips out and goes straight up feral, attacking him. Later, we see father and son leaving the island, with everyone looking pretty pumped about the ritual. At the gate, they run into the elders, the longtime villagers. The leader explains that if they're gone for more than a day, they'll be considered infected, and no one will bother trying to rescue them. She points to a cemetery where people who volunteered to save others ended up getting royally screwed. Jamie and Spike have to cross a stretch that connects the survivor camp to the rest of the island. The tide's gonna come in 4 hours, and if they're not back by then, they'll be stuck in infected territory until the tide goes back out. Jamie warns that if they try swimming back to the camp, the current will throw throw them out into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. When they finally hit the infected zone, they encounter a new breed of infected, the crawlers. These slow-moving freaks eat anything they find on the ground, including delicious worms. Jamie tells Spike to shoot one in the neck with an arrow, which Spike does, and bam! First kill of the career. Out of nowhere, the infected's wife shows up and tries to eat the humans, but Jamie takes her and the couple's kid down, cause yeah, infected can still procreate. They then come face to face with the infected family's youngest kid, but Jamie hesitates and lets it slip away. Personally, I think that was a mistake. They could have been attacked by it at night when visibility would be low. Plus, the little crawler might have been able to signal other infected, which could have drawn a whole horde on their backs. I'm saying this because humans don't visit that island often, so they have no idea how the infected are evolving. It's a good idea to be cautious here. Later, Jamie and Spike find an abandoned house and decide to search for supplies. Aside from a frisbee, they run into an infected tied upside down by another group of survivors. Spike notices the guy has an M carved into his chest and realizes they left him to get infected on purpose. Jamie says this is a lesson Spike needs to learn and tells him to finish off the infected, but the kid's still a softie and lets him free. When Jamie goes to do the job for him, Spike finally gets the courage to shoot the bastard. Jamie explains that the more Spike takes down the infected, the easier it'll get next time. At this point, Jamie should have taken Spike back to the beach and waited for the tide to go down. The kid already completed his mission by finishing off 2 infected, so that should have been enough. Venturing deeper into the forest is a terrible idea, but screw it, because Jamie doesn't listen and decides to keep going. They eventually come across a shredded deer. Jamie jokes that it was probably killed by a group of infected, but his smile fades when he sees the deer's head stuck on a tree branch. Jamie says an alpha did this. Those stronger, smarter infected. Sure enough, it's not long before they come face to face with the alpha. At this point, Jamie should have told Spike to crouch, since they're crossing a tall grass field. That way, they wouldn't be seen by the pack. But nope, he tells Spike to stand still instead. If the alpha's smart, it's definitely gonna notice 2 people standing right in front of it. It was obvious the alpha would pick up on this, and sure enough, it sends the infected minions after them. Jamie asks Spike to help him take down the infected with arrows, but he misses all the vital spots, even though he finishes off 4 infected. Since Spike's a horrible shot, Jamie drags him back to the house where they found the tied up guy, and they finish off the 5th and 6th infected. As more infected close in, they get desperate. Luckily, they find an attic and hide out until the infected leave. That night, Jamie explains that the alpha will be waiting for them to leave the house. He says it's pointless to fight these alphas since they can take a lot of damage before going down. Later on, the 2 spot a patrol boat, keeping an eye on the island to make sure no humans escape and spread the outbreak to the mainland. What really catches Spike's attention, though, is a column of smoke rising from deep within the forest. He asks Jamie what it is, but Jamie says he has no idea. A few hours later, Jamie wakes up in panic as the house they're in starts collapsing. He and Spike make a run for it, heading back toward the beach. Lucky for them, the tide's low enough, and they manage to cross back to the camp. But guess what? They basically forget there's a naked alpha on their tail, strolling through the woods like they're taking a Sunday stroll in the rain. In this situation, they shouldn't have stopped running for a second until they were safe at the camp. And the house collapse definitely drew the attention of every infected in the area, so they would have come to check out the source of the noise. I'm saying this because the alpha is faster than a speeding bullet, and its sole mission is to snack on Jamie and Spike. When they realize they're on the breakfast menu, they start sprinting toward the camp gate. Here's another dumb move by the humans. Why even have guards at the gate if they're just gonna sleep on the job? The guards finally wake up and shoot a bunch of arrows into the alpha's chest, but it just gets up like it's nothing, almost biting Spike. It doesn't happen though, because one of the guards fires a flaming projectile from the ballista, turning the alpha into a roasted beta. Jamie and Spike try to force their way into the camp, but the old cat lady tells them to wait and prove they haven't been infected. Luckily, nothing bad happens, and before long, there's a big party thrown for Spike, with Jamie slightly exaggerating, claiming his son killed a bunch of infected. Spike also gets the chance to take his first shot of alcohol, which doesn't sit well with him since he's more of a milk and cookie kind of kid. Stepping outside for some air, Spike sees something that totally bums him out. Jamie is getting cozy with a young woman from the camp, who, as it turns out, is married. That kills the family image Spike had of his dad, and he heads home to sulk. He talks to Sam, one of the old timers, and asks about the column of smoke coming from the forest. Sam says it's probably the work of Dr. Kelson, a former doctor he used to see before the outbreak. Sam's surprised surprised that Kelson's still alive, especially since he's living inside infected territory. Spike asks why his dad lied about all the doctors dying, and Sam explains that Jamie probably didn't want to scare him, since Kelson has a reputation for being completely nuts. The next day, we see Jamie coming back from his bender, and Spike confronts him, saying he knows about Dr. Kelson. The kid reveals that his mom's dying, and the doctor might be the only one who can help. Jamie explains that he met Kelson early in the outbreak when he was foraging in the forest for food. At the time, Kelson was burning victims of the epidemic in a big bonfire. I counted at least 200 bodies just lying there. Kelson saw Jamie and just waved him over to join the party, but Jamie bolted out of there. With Jamie refusing to go after Kelson, Spike gets sassy and asks if the husband of the girl Jamie hooked up with last night would like to know he's a cuckold. At that point, Jamie slaps him across the face. He immediately regrets it and tries to make up with Spike, but the little guy tells him to stay away from Isla. A few hours later, Spike runs up to the watchtower, frantic, saying the camp's storage shed is on fire. That gets all the guards to leave their posts and rush to put it out. What's really weird is that the last guard says he can't leave his post, but Spike fires back that everyone's needed to put out the fire. The guard could have just told Spike to do it, since if he's old enough to take down infected out there, he's probably strong enough to carry a few buckets of water. That way the guard wouldn't have had to leave the gate unguarded, which, you know, could have led to an infected horde showing up. But screw it, Spike takes advantage of the chaos, grabs his mom, and makes a run for it into the infected zone. Since Isla's not all there mentally, she doesn't realize what's happening until they're standing in front of an old city. She says they can't stay there, but Spike reveals the tide's already up, and they can't go back to the camp now. He tells her she needs to go to the doctor, so the two of them continue their walk through the evil woods. As the hours pass, Isla gets super tired, and Spike has no choice but to set up camp in a tiny castle in the middle of nowhere. The worst part is that Spike could have chosen a higher spot to camp just so he could see if any infected were getting close. Staying low like that was a terrible idea, especially since Spike had already seen the crawlers the day before and knew they hunt on the ground. And of course, this is exactly what happens. Spike falls asleep during his watch and doesn't notice one of the creatures creeping up on them. Luckily, the crawlers are blind, and the infected mistakes his shoelace for a tasty worm. However, the crawler eventually realizes it's not a worm, and as it's about to bite Spike, someone sneaks up behind it and finishes it off. Spike and Isla wake up in the morning and see the dead infected, confused about how it happened. But we find out it was Isla who killed the creature to protect her son during a moment of clarity. While all that's going down, we see some NATO soldiers landing on the island, being chased by an ambush coordinated by another Alpha. At this point, the soldiers should have turned around and opened fire on the infected, who probably don't number more than 20. These scouts' machine guns have about 30 rounds in the clip, so that's 240 bullets ready to go. Obviously, the humans run slower than the infected, not to mention one of the soldiers is injured, which is gonna slow them down even more. It doesn't take long for 5 soldiers to get infected, with 2 of them getting a mercy shot while another 10 infected are taken down. Only 3 soldiers survive the attack by hiding in a tunnel. Unfortunately, it's a trap, as the Alpha's been waiting to chow down on them on the other side of the tunnel. The Alpha rips one soldier's spine out like it's nothing, and finishes off the second recruit. The last one is smart enough to escape the tunnel by shooting another infected. Meanwhile, Spike and Isla are crossing a flower field when Isla has another one of her hallucinations and starts rambling about a prophecy from a priest who said the apocalypse wouldn't last forever. Sadly, her crazy moment attracts an infected who, back when the movie trailer dropped, some people thought was Jim from the first film, but that's not the case. Murphy only reprises the role in the 4th movie. Spike manages to finish off the infected, but a bunch more show up, forcing them to hide in a gas station. The kid's becoming a pro with the bow and hits another infected. When they get inside the gas station's diner, Isla and Spike start choking from the benzene vapor in the air, an extremely cancerous product. More infected join the party, and Spike finishes one off with a fire extinguisher. At this point, Spike could have used the fire extinguisher to spray the liquid on the infected, clouding their vision. That way, the humans could have snuck out of the diner and survived. Luckily for the duo, a NATO soldier shows up and tells them to duck. He opens fire on the infected, but the bullet hits the benzene mist, turning them into well-done meat. The soldier introduces himself as Eric and asks what's gonna happen after the explosion noise. Spike says he's not sure, but it's possible more infected will be attracted to the barbecue. In a way, Eric's being a bit of a jerk here, saying Spike's not helping much and that he shouldn't have saved them and wasted ammo in the process. You know what I find hilarious? Eric could have grabbed the rifle samples from the other 7 soldiers that got taken out earlier, but nope, he totally ignores them. Spike then asks Eric to take them to Dr. Kelson. He explains his mom's condition and invites the soldier to come live with them in the camp after the checkup. On the way, they exchange life stories, and Eric shares how he joined the Swedish Navy to prove to his best friend that wasting your life working as a delivery driver wasn't the way to go. Personally, I think he was wrong. According to Eric, NATO patrols the entire perimeter of the island, and anyone who steps on land will never be able to return to the mainland. Eric reveals that his boat was patrolling Scotland when they hit something. The boat sank, and they took a raft, but the current pushed them toward the island. Eric asks why there are different types of infected, and Spike says his dad mentioned that the infection acts differently in some people, almost like steroids, boosting their strength. The soldier then says that if he gets turned, he'll probably become an alpha since he has Viking blood. I think that's pretty unlikely, but let's roll with it. Out of nowhere, they hear a threatening growl coming from an abandoned train. Guess what Isla does? She heads straight toward the noise, even though she knows it's an infected. At this point, the group should have avoided the danger, but Spike says he'll go wherever his mom goes. It makes no sense since Eric's the one holding the rifle. He could have used it to force both mom and son to change their minds, but nope, he just follows the group. When they get inside the train car, they see an infected woman in labor, struggling like crazy. Isla, thinking she's been watching too much Grey's Anatomy before the outbreak, holds the infected woman's hands, helping her give birth. I'd never do that, since things like blood, sweat, and saliva can infect Isla. Keeping her distance is the only smart move here. To everyone's surprise, a little girl is born without the infection, which suggests the placenta protected her during pregnancy. The calm moment doesn't last long when the infected mom wakes up and tries to eat Isla, showing she's a real ungrateful brat. Eric shoots her and threatens to do the same to the baby, thinking she's infected. That doesn't happen because the alpha from the tunnel reappears and rips the Swedish soldier's head off. Isla and the newborn girl flee the train, while Spike takes out the Captain Hot Dog with several arrows. He could have shot the infected in the head, since the skin's thinner there, and it would have pierced the alpha's skull, but nah. Spike prefers aiming for its belly. The alpha catches up to the kid but doesn't eat him because Dr. Kelson shows up and darts the infected with a morphine shot in the neck. Kelson seems to be enjoying the situation and pulls Eric's skull out of the alpha's claws, calling it Samson. The crazy doctor apologizes for his appearance, revealing that he rubbed iodine all over his body because the virus hates that chemical. The doctor takes the two of them to a temple that Kelson's been building since the start of the epidemic. He was burning the bodies to place the skulls in a monument, reminding everyone that we're all gonna die one day, or as he likes to say in Latin, memento mori. Kelson then asks the kid to place Eric's skull wherever he wants, which he does. Later, Kelson examines Isla and unfortunately discovers that she has brain cancer, and the worst part is, it's spread. He tells Isla that she'll meet her maker soon, and there's nothing Spike can do about it. Isla reveals she suspected this was the diagnosis, but never had the guts to admit it. She was hoping the other survivors would say it out loud, but no one ever did. Hold up, if she knew she had terminal cancer, wouldn't it have been easier to tell her kid and save him from this hellish trip where he almost got eaten like 27 times? Anyway, she asked to be relieved of her suffering, and Kelson finishes her off with a dart. A few hours later, Kelson asks the kid to choose the best place to put his mom's skull, and Spike places it on top of the pile. The next morning, we see Kelson, the little girl, and Spike hiding from the alpha. The infected isn't dumb and nearly makes the doctor its breakfast. Spike steps in and sticks a dart into Samson's arm, paralyzing him once again. The doctor tells the kid he needs to go home, which he does. Spike leaves a note at the camp's gate and tells his dad to look after the little girl, who he named after his mom. Jamie tries to chase after his son, but Spike's already long gone. The kid wants to learn to fend for himself, so he catches a fish for lunch. Unfortunately, he doesn't have time to feast because another pack of infected shows up, chasing him down. The kid sends 2 more bastards to the afterlife, but finds himself cornered by a stone wall. He could have easily climbed the structure, but it won't be necessary because guess who shows up? That's right, Jimmy, the little Teletubbies fan from the beginning of the movie. Jimmy decides to help the scared kid and sends his little Teletubbies gang from the underworld to beat up the infected, sending 9 more souls to the afterlife. Jimmy introduces himself and says he wants to be friends with Spike. The kid notices the cross on the man's chest and sees that it has the same mark that was left on the infected he and his dad found tied up in the abandoned shack. 28 years later got some great reviews from critics, but audiences didn't love it as much. Looking at all 3 movies in this universe, I'd rank this third one in second place. The first half has an awesome pace and delivers plenty of tense moments, but the second half really drags things down. The whole reason they come up with to send the characters back into the infected zone is full of plot holes, so I'm giving it a solid 7 out of 10. At the box office though, it crushed it, pulling in over $150 million on a $60 million budget. Since the sequel is already filmed 28 years later, Bone Temple hits theaters in January 2026. If you guys want me to cover that one too, smash that like button and drop a comment saying I'm in. Without further ado, let's get to the kill count. The grand total is 251 kills, and the Golden Kill Award goes to the soldier who got his head taken clean off by the Alpha in the tunnel. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. See you in the next video. Take care.